From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the news at 10, live from Channels Television. Reported tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Good evening and welcome. Tonight, the World Economic Forum opens in Abuja. African leaders harp on safety as delegates shop for investment opportunities. The United States, Britain and China make firm commitment to the fight against terror and rescuing the missing Chibok schoolgirls. Police offer 50 million naira reward for missing schoolgirls. And thousands of South Africans vote in the country's fifth multiracial elections. And business news tonight, state governments woo investors as the World Economic Forum kicks off in earnest.
And on sports news tonight, 24 schools know their opponents in the draws for the Lagos preliminaries of the Channels National Kids Cup.
Military recovers large cache of arms from Benue, Plateau and Kaduna states. Continues search for missing schoolgirls.
As the World Economic Forum opens in Nigeria's federal capital city, African leaders have been advised not to be deterred from creating jobs and promoting trade on the continent despite the rising wave of terrorism. This advice is coming from the President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, who is in Nigeria for the forum. Our correspondent Bolaji Akinwale reports that the Kenyan President alongside his counterpart from Rwanda, Paul Kagame, believe that together Africa can win the war on terror.
As global leaders and delegates arrive for the World Economic Forum in Africa, the message is clear. Together, the monster called terrorism, which is threatening the existence of the continent and indeed the entire world, must be brought to its knees.
Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta is one of those who didn't mince words on this great cause.
We must work together to address ourselves to these concerns and to deal firmly and get a proper solution to remove these criminals from our midst. But I'd like to insist that it is not an African problem, it's not a Nigerian problem, it's not a Kenyan problem. It is a global problem which we must address together.
And if it is a global problem, attention must be focused on how to protect the people in order for the continent to record inclusive growth and create jobs for the unemployed.
For us as leaders, we must ensure that these criminals do not detract us from the agenda that we have of bringing our continent together, increasing intra-Africa trade, creating jobs for our young men and women, and bringing about prosperity for our continent. We must not allow ourselves to be derailed by the acts of a few confused people.
How can this be achieved? President Paul Kagame of Rwanda let us into some of his achievements in the past, especially in relation to technology.
First of all, we have to deal with the political side of things. People to understand the need for freedom of movement of people and the rest of it. And then once this is very clear and should be very clear to many who really understand the benefits that come along with that. And then the rest are processes that add to efficiency and also, of course, cost effectiveness. In this case, digitizing these processes makes the processes cost effective and also very efficient. So it makes sense that we bring into play whatever can really contribute to making sure that we get to where we want to be and in time and reducing the costs of how we get there.
It's the first day of the event and the agenda for the meeting has been set. While we await what the rest of the 2 days will offer, one thing seems clear: economic growth may never be achieved if leaders do not pay attention to what will sustain it. Bolaji Akinwale for Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, Nigeria and China have agreed to maintain the momentum of exchange of visits at all levels, including between political parties and legislatures, in order to promote mutual understanding. This was the outcome of the bilateral meeting between President Goodluck Jonathan and the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang at the presidential villa. While President Goodluck Jonathan reaffirmed the country's commitment to the One China policy, the Premier expressed firm support for Nigeria's efforts at safeguarding its national sovereignty, security and territorial integrity. Our State House correspondent, Shukuma Onekusi, reports.
The Chinese Premier, Mr. Li, arrived at the presidential villa and was accorded a warm reception by President Goodluck Jonathan as officers and men of the Guards Brigade file out for inspection. The two leaders head into the president's office for bilaterals that lasted for about an hour. Bilaterals that also featured the signing of more agreements and MOUs. The communique from the meeting emphasized the need to collaborate in the areas of infrastructure, financial services, trade and investments, as well as agriculture. The president is excited about support in the area of security.
I reiterated Nigeria's commitment to the One China policy, while the Premier expressed firm support for efforts to safeguard our national sovereignty, security and territorial integrity, as well as promoting economic development. Because the Premier promised that China will assist Nigeria in our fight against terror, especially our commitment and effort to rescue the girls that were taken away from the secondary school.
On his part, the visiting premier, through an interpreter, promised to work with Nigeria to ensure safety of the investments so far established. The visit coincides with the World Economic Forum, which Nigeria is hosting. He will also participate in discussions during the World Economic Forum for Africa, as well as sign 6 bilateral agreements with top government officials. Chukwuma Onekusi, Channels Television News.
Well, as expected, business activities in Abuja have been low-key following the 3-day public holiday declared by the federal government as part of security measures during the World Economic Forum. As some residents say, the shutdown is a good idea if it will guarantee safety of investors, which the World Economic Forum is sure to bring to the country.
Most of the roads and streets in Abuja are just as this one, empty, except for a few cars here and there. Shops and businesses are closed for the next 3 days. Security is on very high alert. Cars and people are searched and checked at every step of the way.
For safety reasons, yes. Since the tragedy that has been happening in Yanya has been more of the workforce affecting staff and tragedy, so I think for safety reasons, yes, but for financial, no.
Why do you say financially?
Because if people are not working for like 3 days, it's going to affect people financially. People will be lazy, people will be jobless, and people will make money.
Government concerns are shut down in line with the 3-day holiday declared by the federal government to check vehicular movement as well as pedestrian traffic. The federal secretariat, usually a beehive of activities, is shut.
It's not so good for businesses. Like now, you see, this area is always a very busy day, under a very busy area under normal circumstances. You see, everywhere is shut today. The town is so dry and all. And I see that about 3 days shutting down businesses will seriously affect this economy.
Some people argue that the 3 days shutdown of the Federal Capital Territory would cause a dip in revenue generation for the city. But others say that the expected benefits of the World Economic Forum in terms of boosting investments, creation of jobs, inclusive growth, and even showcasing Nigeria are definitely worth it. Omelogo Nnadi, Channels Television News.
Well, staying with security, a group of Nigerian businessmen, the UN Special Envoy for Education and former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown have held a meeting to find solution to the growing attacks and kidnap of young girls in Nigeria. After a closed-door meeting, a $10 million fund was announced as an initial intervention measure for 500 schools in the Northeast to build community, strengthen security, and promote schools as safe places. Our correspondent, Gloria Umezoke, has more.
As the global community turns full swing on the recent kidnapping of over 200 schoolgirls in the Northeast, there have been response to these terrorist acts around the world. A group of international businessmen at the World Economic Forum for Africa has taken a step to encourage the government to invest in education and promote schools as safe places. This is the idea behind the Safe Schools initiative that was launched as part of the World Economic Forum for Africa. They started by pledging $10 million as fund for 500 schools in the Northeast.
We want parents and teachers to look at what safety measures they need for the schools, and we want the government to come in on this with the international business community. I believe, obviously, that the schools that are most in need of this are in the north of the country, and there are 5,000 schools in these 6 areas. We want to stand beside the people of Nigeria in helping people be reassured that action is being taken.
According to the business leaders, this initiative, amongst others, is the only way education in the Northeast can continue.
There are 10 million children out of the 30 million that should be in school today that are not. And so there's a long-term issue that needs to be dealt with in addition to the short-term measures that need to be put in place in existing schools. In addition, there's a gender gap issue. Nigeria ranks 106 out of the 136 countries that we cover on gender gaps, and one of the worst areas is on educational attainment.
Whilst we remain firmly committed to bringing back our girls and working with governments at all levels to do all that we can to return our girls, we believe that the greater danger is in the fear of going to school, and that if we don't take time, we could lose a generation of students who are afraid of their safety in schools.
Well, these security measures are considered to be a very welcome intervention, both locally and internationally. But what is also being emphasized here is regular inspection of these schools to stop schools from being a primary target of terrorism. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, police offers a 50 million naira reward for information on the Chibok schoolgirls. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.